Hello and welcome back to In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today we're here with episode 76, and we've got a lot to talk about. We've had some big fight announcements. We're going to be talking about what went down this past weekend, what's coming up this next weekend. I'm not going to lie, it's a little bit of a dry spot in terms of fights. We had an okay weekend this past weekend. Mainly the big thing for boxing was Oscar Duarte and Kenneth Sims Jr., which was a pretty good fight. And then you had Regis Prograis Jojo Diaz in the co-main, which was an incredible fight. The UFC card was okay, but it was still an Apex card. You had a PFL card, the first of the World Championships for them. And you had a pretty decent BKFC card. Outside of that, not a ton happened. And then this next weekend, we'll talk about it more. But we've got another UFC Apex card, which has potential. You've got a BKFC fight night. You've got a PFL Africa card. So not a lot going on. And then we do have only one boxing card this weekend, which is like a WBA event. And, you got guys like Mirko Cuello and Albert Ramirez fighting in interim world title fights. So we'll see how it goes. That one could be fun. We'll talk about that more in a bit. But we're going to start actually with yesterday. We had two big announcements from the Ring Magazine. The Ring Magazine has learned that the Ring Magazine is putting on an event, which I just think the whole way that they break the news is so stupid. But anyways, it's official. Chris Eubank Jr. Conor Benn 2 is going to be happening November 15th at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. This fight has been through such a roller coaster, as the first one did even 3 years ago when it was meant to happen. Obviously, since the first fight happened, Turkey said, yeah, we want to do a second fight. A couple months back, it was out of nowhere just dropped that the fight was going to happen on September 20th. No specific stadium attached to it, but in London. And then since then, the fight was then said that it was not actually done and that it was not, a done deal. And then the Ring Magazine was no longer interested in putting on the event, and therefore the fight itself just kind of fell apart. Then some stuff between Turkey and Eubank, and it seemed like Turkey didn't want to work with him anymore. And then it was just on Eddie Hearn and Ben Shalom to make the fight, and it seemed like we were not really going to ever see this rematch again. And then we hear, okay, now Turkey's considering putting the fight on again. And didn't really hear anything, and then boom, out of nowhere, it's now going to be happening in November at the same location that happened in April. Which, I mean, hey, less than 7 months on from the first fight, which is not at all a bad turnaround. I was a little bit surprised they were doing September 20th at first. I'm fine with this. I'm excited. I think this is good that they're making the fight, but I don't want to give my hopes up just yet, just because this is not the first time that this rematch has been announced, and the last time it was announced, it wasn't even actually official. So I don't want to say yet, oh yeah, I can't wait, when it still may not be official. So we're gonna wait. We're gonna see what happens. I'm gonna wait until we get like an official press conference and all that stuff. But I do believe that we will likely see this fight now, and it should be good. I'm guessing it's the same stipulations as before in terms of weight and rehydration and stuff, which I know it's not good for either guy, but they're so far apart in weight that they're both going to have to make sacrifices. And yes, Eubank was too dehydrated, and yes, Ben was way too small, but there's not really much you can do there. There's just not. So if we want to see the fight, we just have to accept that we won't be able to see either guy at their best. And that's that. But I'm excited for it. Now, what's interesting is that this takes place just 1 week before another big Turkey Al Sheikh event, that being the Night of Champions, headlined by Benavidez versus Yard. And it was just announced last night as well that Artur Beterbiev is going to be returning on that card against Deon Nicholson, who is 22-1 with 18 knockouts. A little bit unproven, it seems. And, this is very clear. This is a stay busy fight for Beterbiev. He and Bivol are going to have the trilogy. There's been some issues. A lot of people are saying that Bivol is trying to age out Beterbiev. And listen, I'm a Bivol fan, but it is a little bit questionable why we're not getting this fight on November 22nd itself, and what's going on with Bivol, and why he's on vacation right now in the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and why he's not wanting to get this fight going. And Beterbiev has said, look, I'm waiting to sign the contract. They're the ones who are wanting to push it back and push it back and push it back. So I'm not really sure what the whole situation is there with those two. We all want to see the trilogy. That's why we're not seeing Benavidez versus Bivol or Benavidez versus Beterbiev. But hey, I like that Beterbiev is going to stay active. I have no doubt that he blows this Nicholson guy out of the water. We were hearing that it could have been Najee Lopez, who's been fighting on some pro box events. I kind of would have preferred that, but I'm also fine with it because it would have destroyed his career when I do think that he has a good amount of promise. So we'll see what this is like, but I think Beterbiev probably knocks him out in the first half of the fight. It really is just to stay busy. I know a lot of people, and I agree, are complaining. We have Beterbiev and Benavidez fighting on the same card. Why are they not just fighting each other? And I have to agree. I mean, we could have really just seen Yard versus Nicholson, and we don't even really need to see that fight anyways. Just make Benavidez versus Beterbiev for the WBC championship. There's no reason not to. Just make it happen. I would have no objections if that's what we were seeing. Um, I don't know. It's very odd. It's very disappointing. I'm not surprised. I'm not, necessarily too upset. But when you look at it, it's like, okay, this is kind of stupid that they're fighting on the same event and they're not just fighting each other. Because that, even over Beterbiev Bivol 3 or Benavidez Bivol, I really want to see Beterbiev and Benavidez throw down. Because, man, that fight would be unbelievable and so exciting to watch. But it is what it is. We're also hearing that Subriel Matias, Dalton Smith is in the works for that card. We know that they're really trying to make that one happen. As we know, the WBO ordered Callum Smith to defend his interim title against David Morrell, which is in the same weight class as Benavidez and Yard, Beterbiev and Nicholson. And that could also fall on this card if that is to happen. I do really like that fight. I think that those guys are both top 10 in the division. Obviously, I think that Imam Kataev did beat David Morrell, and he deserves to be in that position, but it is what it is. I would love to see that fight, especially if it fell on this card. And we were also hearing a while ago, no updates yet, that Murataya versus Cruz could end up here as well. So November 22nd is just going to be a phenomenal night of boxing, and I really cannot wait. But let's talk about a weekend that just transpired. And let's dive into it first, since we're talking about boxing with Oscar Duarte and Kenneth Sims. I just want to give my applause to Kenneth Sims Jr. because I expected Oscar Duarte to beat him a lot more handily than he did. I thought that it was a great fight. I thought that it was a style matchup that I was anticipating, but it ended up gelling together a lot better than I thought. I had the fight 116-112 for the Mexican. I thought that Kenneth Sims Jr. showed a lot of moments where I was like, oh my gosh, like he can totally, if he just sticks to this game plan, he can outbox Duarte all night long. He had so many moments of just like really, really great boxing, but I feel like he just wasn't consistent with it, if that makes sense. Where, he'd have these great rounds, but then outside of that, where it was so clearly Kenneth Sims rounds, then the rest of them you just gave to Duarte because Duarte was just nonstop pressure and doing what Mexicans do and just nonstop throwing and making it a long night and just pummeling him to the body and all this stuff. And we just weren't really seeing enough from Sims. And I felt like he let a lot of rounds get away from him, where I feel like he could have had a much better performance. And I saw there was a shades of a great fighter in there that could have beaten Duarte that night, and he didn't. But Duarte won. It was a great fight. I don't think we need to see a rematch. Listen, there's a really good fight out there for Oscar Duarte, and that's Isaac Pitbull Cruz, Mexican versus Mexican for the WBC interim title. It makes all the sense in the world. I would love to see that one happen. It would just be phenomenal. There's a lot of other guys in the 140-pound division, but Duarte and Cruz are two of the guys that I think are right around the number 10 mark that I don't know if I want to see them in a world title fight right now. They've still got to get one more big win to prove it, and those two together in the ring would just be absolute carnage, and I would love to see it. But the co-main event honestly stole the show. Same division, that being Regis Prograis and Jojo Diaz. There's another potential there is to do Duarte Prograis. That was, talked about happening, so I don't see why we can't revisit it. But yeah, I mean, I was ready to write off Jojo Diaz. I feel like he's had a really bad past year and he's had a lot of losses, but if you look at a lot of those losses, they've all been pretty competitive, and this is one that I actually, on my scorecard, I had Jojo winning at the end of the fight. I'm not mad at all at Prograis having the decision. I think it's 96-94 either way or a draw, but I thought it was a phenomenal fight. Super fun to watch, and we just kind of saw that Prograis, he's still offensively very sound and was definitely the better boxer than Diaz. It's just that, man, like he's at the age now where he just can't take a punch as well. And he got hurt numerous times in this fight, and his legs just were not under him, and that really was what hurt him a lot in this fight because he was clearly the better boxer. And I think that's kind of what got him the decision. But it was a really fun fight. Jojo Diaz showed that, yeah, he's had, probably like 7, 8 losses by now, but he's still very, very much a game fighter and a very tough outing for any gatekeep, as a gatekeeper for anyone. And I hope he gets another fight, man. I do. I would honestly prefer to just see this fight run back. It was that good because, yeah, it was a lot of fun. You had Joshua Edwards on that card. He got a first round knockout. I would like to see him stepped up a bit. We're hearing they want to step him up pretty quickly. I just want to see him in with at least a somewhat decent fighter because that guy was horrible. But that's my thoughts on it. You had Tristan Kalkruth get a second round finish in a really odd way. His opponent I can't remember what happened, but it was just, his opponent just like randomly quit after 2 rounds when he wasn't doing horrible, and he just straight up didn't want to fight anymore, and he got knocked down or something, and then Kalkruth is doing backflips in the background. It was just absurd. It was a really, really weird fight. But yeah, I mean, you know what though? Tristan Kalkruth mentioned Jake Paul in the aftermath, saying, I'll fight him. And I was like, you know what? That's actually a really good shout. Because Jake Paul is wanting to fight Zurdo Ramirez or Jai Patai or even Anthony Joshua or Gervonta Davis. He wants to fight guys all over the place, all these world champions. Kalkruth is a guy who's been beaten before, so it's possible. He's young, he's hungry, and he's a cruiserweight. That's the exact kind of guy that Jake could fight right now, and honestly has somewhat of a chance of winning. I do think Kalkruth does beat Jake Paul, but that fight makes a lot of sense. Does he have the name? No, but he has the build that you want. He has that, I'm an undefeated cruiserweight. Same weight, same age. That's the exact kind of guy that Jake Paul needs to go for right now. So I thought it was a pretty fun night of boxing. But after that, let's move on to Las Vegas, where we had the UFC Apex event. Actually, before we move to Vegas, I want to jump back to Chicago for a second and just talk about the commission in Chicago. There was some odd scoring. I think one of the judges had it for like 98-92 for Prograis, which was horrible. But more than that, when they were in the Prograis Diaz fight, Jojo, they were asking him how many fingers am I holding up. And when he held up one, he'd say two. He held up two, he'd say one. So he was clearly saying the wrong thing, and the ref just let him fight on with a really bad cut. And I was watching, and I was like, am I crazy, or is he giving him the wrong answers, and the ref just doesn't care, or the doctor? Really, really odd, but I don't know. They don't get a lot of fights there, and didn't have the best performance that night. But anyways, let's talk about Tatsuro Taira and him eradicating Hyun-Sung Park in just 7 minutes. So, I do want to say in all fairness that Park did come into this fight on just like a few days' notice and was not ranked, and Tatsuro Taira is one of the most talented fighters in the UFC flyweight division right now. So we all expected him to win this fight pretty easily, but he looked phenomenal. Dominated the first round, goes into the second round and gets a submission like a minute in or something, just really, really quickly. He's a very, very good fighter, and I would like to see him get in there and mix it with Pantoja because I don't think that they've fought him before. That would just be a really, really fun fight. I don't think he deserves the next title shot yet, but he's in that discussion now. He's like top 5, so we'll see. Maybe it's they revisit Amir Albazi that fight. Maybe he fights Royval or Moreno, or who knows. But yeah, he's definitely in that discussion. Very, very impressed by him. You also had Chris Duncan and Mateusz Rebeski in a phenomenal fight. That was really fun. Esteban Ribovic beating Elvis Brenner in a really good one. Neil Magny beat Dos Santos, which I was not expecting him to do. He's losing the first round, and then he gets a TKO in the second, so that was really cool. Kevin Vallejos, Danny Silva was fun. Rinya Nakamura, great first-round finish. You just had a lot of really, really awesome stuff. You started off the card, you didn't start off the card with a lot of decisions. It was just on the prelims, you had like a few stoppages in a row. Austin Bosch, he had a first round submission. Andre Pulev, second round KO. Like it was a really fun night of fights, I thought, for an Apex card specifically, because we don't usually get them to be this exciting. And I think that it was overall pretty decent. Not a lot of fights, but I thought it was a fun card. You also had PFL World Tournament 8. Not too much to say on that card overall. I think there was some fun stuff that transpired early on in the night. They started off with a lot of finishes, all of which were very exciting. Fred Dupras and submitting Nathan Kelly was pretty cool. But let's just talk about the two title fights. Movlid Khaybulaev beating Jesus Pinedo. I had him winning pretty much every round. Although Pinedo was competitive in there, but the fight was definitely being dominated on the cards by Khaybulaev, and he was just a much better wrestler and was able to use that. And then, he gets the tap in the fifth final round. So I was impressed by him. I thought that he was really, really decent. You also had Thad Jean and Logan Storley going to war in a very, very good fight. One that I had Thad Jean winning 49-46. So yeah, Thad Jean and Movlid Kobylaev are your welterweight and featherweight PFL world champions. I'm not sure what they do with them now, but I will say this: I in my last episode I predicted that Pinedo and Storley were going to win the fights, and I was wrong. So I definitely have to give my credit for both of them. I think Thad Jeans particularly has the potential to be one of the biggest stars in the PFL. He's young. He's on a great run. Um, he's got a lot of potential. I'm just really worried that PFL is not going to manage his career as well as they should. And they're going to put him into these weird tournaments and stuff where they put up, a graphic afterwards on social media saying, like, all right, who's next for both of them? And they had a lot of guys that were not just tournament guys. So it does seem like now that they've won the tournament, they're not going to be in it next year. They're going to put him into more, just like random, almost Bellator type title matchups, the more traditional route. And I would love to see that. There's a lot of fun fights for both those guys. Kobylaev, I'm not sure how much he has left as comparison to Gene. He has won the PFL tournament before, but yeah, I thought it was solid overall. Very impressed by Thad Gene and Kobylaev. Moving on from there, we'd BKFC 79, where you had Gogo Sloveski lose to Julian Lane pretty much just on account of getting knocked down twice. I thought that Julian Lane, was able to win those. He won 3 of the 5 rounds, 2 of which he had knockdowns in, and that got him the victory. So I thought that he fought really well. Even though I think that Gogo, had he not gotten knocked down and hurt so much, I think Gogo probably could have won that fight, even though he was very messy. But Julian Lane, was on like a 6-fight losing streak. Now he's won 6 fights in a row, and he's now the welterweight champion of the BKFC. So good for him, man. Co-main event, you had Taylor Starling and Shelby Cannon. That was a really good competitive fight. I do think Taylor Starling won that 48-47, and she's probably going to get a title shot next. And then before that, you had 9 straight finishes, a ton of just awesome, awesome fights. Just very, very BKFC type fights. Like Corey Willis and Zach Kalmus was 2 like older, like 40-year-old guys, and it was just awesome. And obviously that Sturgis, they broke their attendance record yet again at like 22,000, I think, at this motorcycle rally. It's crazy they could have 22,000 people just standing there, but that's how fun the sport is, and the energy is just so good, and it definitely fits a motorcycle rally crowd very well. So, yeah, that was pretty awesome. We also had the rematch between Panya Pradabsri and Carlos Canizales this weekend for the WBC Light Flyweight Championship. Canizales got his revenge. I did not see the first fight, and I have not watched this one yet. I do plan on doing so. I did hear that he got dropped in the first round, but then stopped Pradabsri in the 5th round after the first fight apparently was very, very one-sided to Canizales, or at least should have been, and then they gave it to Pradabsri because he was in his homeland. So good to see that he's gotten his revenge and gotten his justice, and he's now holding a world title where I feel like he's had a lot of bad luck. I thought that he beat Kenshiro Taraji 2 years ago as well. Um, so I don't know, man, but it's cool that he's now holding that title, and there's lots of good stuff in that division. I feel like that's maybe the division that's the most, not focused on and overlooked. Well, we've got a lot of fun fights that could be made there. So hopefully we get him in with somebody like Takami, and that could be a lot of fun. Moving on from that, we also had Gabe Rosado return this weekend. He had a first round knockout, not against anybody important, but I mainly just want to talk about that this is the time to make that Edgar Berlanga fight. They've talked about doing it for a while. Rosado really wants that fight, and this is the moment for him to take it, I think. Berlanga is not the same fighter that he once was, and he just got eradicated by Hamza Shiraz. He needs to have a little bit of a comeback, and I think that Rosado is that guy. I think Berlanga still beats him. Rosado has not been active, and Berlanga still is pretty skilled. Is he going to be a world champion? Probably not, but he can still be in fun fights, and I think this one makes a lot of sense right now. So I'd like to see that one get made. Moving on from there, we're going to talk about this next upcoming weekend. Like I mentioned, we have a really interesting boxing card in Libya, actually, which is going to be headlined by Mirko Cuellar versus Sergio Rios for the WB Interim Featherweight Championship, both undefeated. And winner of this is going to be mandatory for Nick Ball. I do think that Cuellar will likely win this fight, and then we could see Ball and Cuellar fight, which would be an awesome one. Nick Ball obviously has to get through Sam Goodman next week, and Cuellar has to finish Rios, but that one, they seem like they're on a bit of a collision course. You got Albert Ramirez and Jerome Pampalone fighting in a 12-round light heavyweight affair, which I think is a WBA eliminator as well. So he could be in line to fight Benavidez or Bivol. It's good to see El Ramirez is finally going to get somewhat closer to a world title shot because he's been waiting on it and he deserves it. You've also got guys like Sofian Omija and Mike Perez fighting. 5 fights in total, all 10 and 12 rounds. So it should be a good night of boxing. I'm excited. It's going to be in the afternoon on Friday. So I'm definitely going to tune in for that. Outside of that, we have another UFC Apex event. This one headlined by Roman Dolidze versus Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. I'm seeing everybody get behind Fluffy to win this. Part of me does want to pick him, but I also feel like Dolidze is on a really good run and has been upsetting people. I think that he was the underdog against Vettori and he beat him, so we'll see how it goes. But this is number 9 versus number 10, but I'm really excited for that main event. Steve Erceg in the co-main against Ode Osborne, which I actually think is a pretty evenly matched fight for where Erceg has been in his recent performances. So that one should be good. You got Yasmin Lucindo versus Angela Hill, both top 12 in the strawweight division, and Andre Fili, Christian Rodriguez. And yeah, I think it's going to end up being 12 fights yet again. So I think it should be fun. I'm excited for it. It's just an Apex card, but those have potential. And then other than that, you've got a BKFC event in Edmonton and a PFL event in Johannesburg. I'm not even really going to talk about those. I don't know if there's anything worth talking about on them. The BKFC could be fun. Maybe PFL have some interesting stuff, but yeah, neither of them are major events at all. So we'll just see if anything exciting happens. We'll talk about it next episode. But moving on from there, we're going to jump into some news. And Matchroom Boxing this week put out an entire new schedule for their fall fights. Mostly the fights that were announced are in the UK. They did have one in Mexico, and so we're just going to go through them. First one, it's going to be Pat McCormack returning, and he's going to be going through Miguel Parra. So I don't know, I'm not too familiar with Parra, but McCormack is 7-0 as a pro. Not had a lot of fights. This is a guy that Matchroom has been pushing and has been trying to keep active. So interesting that he's going to be headlining here. This is in Sunderland Live. It's at the Sunderland Live, which I'm not really too familiar with that area in England. If it's a big venue, I'm guessing it's probably not. Co-main event, you're going to have Mark Dickinson versus Troy Williamson, which is a step up for Dickinson, but a fight he can win, and that's for the English title. You've got Leo Atang returning, TMA Aiton, so two of Matchroom's top prospects. Also, the returns of people like Sandy Ryan on that card. Cameron Vong's coming back. Adam Maka, another big prospect. So, should be a pretty fun night. And then you head to Mexico on the same day. These are both on September 6th. Sugar Nunez against Pitufo Diaz. Now, listen, I'm excited to see Sugar Nunez come back. I'm glad they're getting him a headliner in his home country. But, dude, he easily beats Christopher Diaz. That is such a poor first title defense. I'm very disappointed in that. We're talking about him fighting Anthony Cacace or somebody like that. Now it's going to be Christopher Diaz. Yeah, I'm very disappointed in that opponent selection because I feel like that's just really easy for him. But then we get to the big one, October 17th, Dave Allen versus Arslanbek Makhmudov. Hearing there's a lot of potential guys for Allen, but Makhmudov was the one that they had chosen. It's now been confirmed it's going to be at the Utilita Arena in Sheffield, and it's still just really surprising to me that Dave Allen is now like the A side in these fights, and he's now the guy that is being pushed when, like even he's saying, like, I don't know if I really deserve that. He didn't beat this world beater in Johnny Fisher. He beat a prospect. But, I do really like this fight for him. I'm not going to lie. I think that this is a fight that is very, very much a 50-50 and well matched. And Makhmudov, he's only lost twice, but his 2 losses come to Caballel and Vianello, 2 guys who were way better than him on the night. And, he's very scary, but I don't know how much skill he really has. But he's also big enough that he can definitely handle Dave Allen and has beaten guys that, you would probably put around the same level as Dave Allen as he was a few years ago. So is Dave Allen really this new and improved guy? Is Makhmudov, well and improved as well? I don't know, but I'm really excited to see that fight. We also know on that card we're going to have Boston for Waz 2 finally for the English Super Welterweight title. As well as Josh Padley coming back against Maurice Bellotti. I'm a little bit concerned with how quickly Bellotti is coming back. It's going to be less than a 3-month turnaround after getting absolutely brutalized by Ryan Garner. I don't think he needs to be coming back that quickly, especially against Padley, who they're putting him in there to make Padley look good. I'm not confident that Padley beats Bellotti, if I'm being honest. I do think Bellotti's really good, and Padley is good, but nothing insane. So I actually really like the matchmaking. I just don't like how quickly of a turnaround it's going to become for Reese Bellotti. But you're going to have Ibrahim Suleiman and Hamza Udin and Connor Tewksbury all returning as prospects on there as well. And then lastly, Kieran Conway, George Liddard for the British and Commonwealth middleweight titles October 17th at York Hall, which is very interesting because I feel like Matchroom has said for a while, oh, we're not going to do shows in York Hall. That's for like the little leagues. And now here they are coming back to York Hall. I think this is a very good York Hall fight. I would have rather seen this on an undercard, but I do think it's still a good fight. George Liddard will sell a lot of tickets. I think him and Kieran Conway is a really, really interesting and competitive fight. So I'm looking forward to that one. So they've got a really nice schedule. Queensberry as well have their own updates. They've signed both Joshua Buatsi and Brad Rea. So they're definitely looking to make some big light heavyweight moves. They've got a lot of guys on their roster now. Apparently Frank Warren said that they are looking to make an all heavyweight card, which will have Buatsi on there as well. I'm not sure who he's going to be fighting. Obviously, we want to see him fight Anthony Yard at some point, but we're also probably going to see Brad Rea versus Lyndon Arthur on this all 175-pound card. So I like that one a lot. But yeah, so they're making some big signings, obviously, with Boxer kind of in the ditch right now. Not sure where they're going to end up. A lot of the fighters are about to jump ship. Wouldn't be surprised if we see people like Adam Azim, Caroline Dubois, Ben Whitaker, Fraser Clark, their bigger stars, all start to try and leave, which could be bad for them. So we'll see. They also announced Nathaniel Collins versus Cristobal Lorente for October 4th in Scotland. Willie Hutchinson is on the card as well. They're also going to have a fight between, I think it's like Glaskin and O'Doherty. I could get those names totally wrong. That is in the lightweight division that could end up being for the vacant European. If Sam Noakes does vacate that, which he likely will, to fight Abdullah Mason in November. So that's a pretty good card there. Excited to see they're coming back to Scotland twice in 1 year. We've been waiting to see Willie Hutchinson come back for a while, and it seems like, with Conlon no longer fighting Lorente, that they've snatched that fight up for Nathaniel Collins, which I think makes a lot more sense. And Nathaniel Collins, I just saw, he's in like the top 10 for Ring Magazine at featherweight. So he's really getting into world territory, and yeah, I'm excited to see this fight. I think that's a good one. Moving on from there, apparently Usyk's team have said that they are open to a potential fight against Deontay Wilder. That's just the money talking. Usyk absolutely washes Wilder, who needs to retire, but even if Wilder's going to keep on fighting, he should not be fighting people like Usyk, and Usyk should not be defending his title against people like Wilder. Just very simple. Oscar De La Hoya said he's not interested in a rematch between Rolly Romero and Ryan Garcia. I don't blame him. Ryan Garcia obviously has a lot of animosity towards Oscar right now because it's just that day of the week. But he really was not a great fight the first time around. Let's just be honest. Ryan and Rolly 1 was not very good. It was not very exciting. So I don't blame them at all for saying Oscar's like, Mannix asking Oscar on Saturday, hey, you want to see that rematch? And be like, no, I think I'm good. So I'm starting to believe that those reports of a rematch being worked on may have been a little bit BS, or at least Oscar isn't really involved with it as much. But I don't think that we need to see that fight at all. It's just really stupid. Not stupid, but it's just not exciting. The first fight was just not very good. Even though it had potential, and I guess there's still potential, they just didn't gel well. We're also hearing potential of Virgil Ortiz Jr. and Boots Ennis finally fighting in 2026. Both Oscar and Eddie are saying that they want to have that happen, but they'll both fight before then. Apparently, Virgil is being targeted to come back in October, as is Boots. As for Virgil, there's rumors of a PBC versus Golden Boy card, which I kind of love, where it'd be Keith Thurman versus Virgil Ortiz Jr., which is a very bad fight because Virgil absolutely destroys Keith Thurman. He should not be fighting anywhere near Virgil's level right now, and that's Virgil fighting down in competition. It should be Thurman versus Zoo right now, as well as Frank Martin versus Arnold Barboza Jr., which I actually think is a really, really well-matched fight. If Frank Martin's moving up to 140. I may even favor Barboza in that fight, but that's a really good one. And so, yeah, I'd kind of like to see that one happen. If we do get a PBC versus Golden Boy card, that'd be pretty cool. As for the Matchroom Boots Ennis side of things, we're hearing that they have sent offers to Josh Kelly, Charles Conwell, Andreas Katsarakis, and Rashidi Ellis. Now, of that mix, Rashidi Ellis is the one that I'm like, really all of them. Ellis has not fought very recently, and I don't know if I really have a lot of interest in that. Josh Kelly, I think that He's got a good name. He's always had a lot of potential, but his ceiling's never been quite as high, and Boots beats him pretty easily. Again, this is kind of dipping your toes. Katsarakis is a guy who's up and coming, and he has potential. I do think Boots still beats him. And then Charles Conwell obviously was just beaten, and I kind of think that may be the best choice in terms of name and and maybe even competition. But again, I think that Ennis beats him same way that Jorge Garcia beat him. So all of these names are fights I think that Boots certainly wins. They're all fights that would not be a walk in the park, but one that I would definitely favor him in. And honestly, any of them I really wouldn't be too upset with that choice. I'd be okay with all of these. Let's move over to MVP as they've had a lot of things that we need to discuss. Jake Paul has hired a lawyer. Can't remember his name, but it's the same guy who's represented people like Elon Musk and Jay-Z, and this is to crack down on people calling his fights rigged and saying that he fixes stuff. And I think that they've just kind of grown tired of everybody crapping on the Jake Paul and MVP brand, and so they're finally going to put their money where their mouth is and try and sue people for it, which, hey, I get it, do what you got to do. It is a little bit crazy, but uh, they are kind of tarnishing his fights and his events, and when they're not fixed and there's no proof of it, it's people just making stuff up, and you have people coming on TV and saying it when it's just completely false. And you have people like Piers Morgan. I know Piers Morgan is meant to be more of an opinionated person, but he's also on the news, and he shouldn't be just spouting out stuff that's not true at all and claiming it as news. Um, Speaking of MVP, some bad press and good press for them. Start with the bad news first. They have officially released H2O, Ashton Silva. This obviously comes a year after he got knocked out by Lucas Body. Since then, Silva's not gotten a fight, whereas Body has had, I think, two with them. He's about to have a third in a world title eliminator. So they've really put all their eggs into him and built him up while they left H2O inactive. H2O was supposed to have a fight in April in another promotion. He got sick like the day before and had to pull out. And, he just tweeted as a free agent saying that they never talked to him about it or anything. They just sent him uh, a release letter, which is very unprofessional and disappointing from them, especially when they had this whole thing about family and stuff. But then MVP bounces back and say, oh, H2O was never actually he was never actually, we were never his official promoter. He was never signed exclusively to us. We were just there to advise his career, which I don't know. I feel like that's kind of rewinding things because it felt for a long time like they were definitely his promoter and a lot more than just an advisory role. So I don't know how much I believe that, but it's what they're saying. I think they may be just trying to save face, but I don't know. It's definitely disappointing because I do still think that H2O has a really promising future ahead of him. And look, I would not be surprised if he jumps ship over to Misfits. He's got a lot of friends over there. They're definitely going to want to pick him up, even though I think H2O could get a Matchroom or Golden Boy or Top Rank deal because he's that good of a prospect, minus the chin. I could see him just wanting to mix around into that influencer world a little bit, uh, build out Misfits pro scene, and them, trying to make it a whole next step in the Jake Paul KSI war and saga. But over to their good news, they have signed Jamal Harvey, who is a U.S. Olympian from 2024, and he's going to be making his pro debut on August 22nd. So this is one of the last few big Olympians that have not been signed yet. And he did not go to Top Rank. He did not go to Golden Boy. He didn't go to Matchroom. He didn't go to PBC. He went to Jake Paul's MVP. And I can't really blame him. Jake Paul trained with the Olympians last year. And they're doing really good things in the sport. So they're really becoming a main player, and they're not signing just, people like Jake Paul. They've got women's world champions, men's world contenders, now some of the best prospects and debutantes in women's and men's boxing, like Jamal Harvey and Tam the Bolt. So I'm excited for this. He's going to be making his pro debut August 22nd in the first half of their back-to-back event. They're going to have Prospects 14 and then their first fight night on that Friday and Saturday night. So I cannot wait for that. And yeah, they really are. They may be like promotion of the year in terms of how much they've just grown and become a force in the sport. And yeah, so I'm excited to see his pro debut and see how it goes for him. But I like the signing a lot from them. We're also hearing that Junto Nakatani is apparently set to vacate his IBF and WBC bantamweight. That's right, bantamweight world titles. As he's about to move up to 122. We're hearing he's going to be on this December Japan versus Mexico or Japan versus everyone card. The fight we all want to see is him and Ramon Cardenas before they get to the fight we all really want to see, which is Junto Nakatani versus Naoya Inoue, and just a mouth-watering dust-up.
in Japan. But yeah, I'm not surprised that Nakatani's going to vacate a little bit earlier than I would have thought. Guessing Takuma Inoue can get in the mix there. Tenshin Nasukawa. Not sure who fights who, but there's a lot of good names in that division that can pick up a belt.
And so I'm curious who will pick them up. We're hearing that Lester Martinez and Christian Mbili is almost a done deal for September 13th on the Canelo Crawford undercard. This is a fight that we were hearing that Turkey wanted and that they were trying to get done. And so yeah, it's really good to see that is now we're moving towards having that official because that is a great fight at 168 pounds. Obviously, Mbili's a lot closer to the Canelo sweepstakes than Martinez is, but Martinez could take that spot from him, and Martinez has been looking for a big fight, and that is that. So I really am hopeful that we get that, and that could be the co-main event, and it's a great fight. ProBox TV also announced their return to Washington, D.C. on September 5th, where they're going to have Jordan White take on Rene Tejas Giron, who obviously has been giving tough fights to Floyd Schofield, Rocky Hernandez as of recent. Actually, Rocky Hernandez kind of dominated him, but, I think that's a really good fight. I think that's going to be a very tough fight for Jordan White. Co-main event, you're going to have Suleiman Sagawa versus Brian Acosta. Acosta coming off giving Ramon Cardenas a tough fight. Sagawa coming off giving Bruce Carrington a very tough fight. After upsetting Ruben Villa. So that's a great matchup right there. Then you've also got Jonathan Cardoso, who's a really good prospect, and he's going to be fighting Luis Torres. Who of course recently he beat up Nicholas Walters. So this is some really from ProBox TV yet again. I think he's got Francois Scarborough Jr. versus D'Angelo Keys. That's a good one. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm just excited for this card. And I really love ProBox, and they're putting together some fun stuff. I didn't even realize their event next weekend is going to be really fun. A lot of good fights on there. So, yeah, excited to see that one on September 5th. Luis Neri is signed with Kameda Promotions. He's going to be having 5 fights in Japan over the next 18 months, which is crazy. Part of that worries me a little bit, and I kind of feel, okay, what are the quality of these fights going to be if he's fighting that much and that often and only in Japan? I hope he's going to be moving towards like a world title fight, fighting in like real contender fights. But I'm also worried it could just be kind of stay busy fights, but we'll see what happens. We've also got some BKFC announcements. So BKFC 80 on September 12th is going to be headlined by Luis Perdomo versus Arnold Adams 2. They just fought in July, and it was a really odd end to the fight. So I'm not surprised that they're doing a rematch. I don't think that there was really a need for one because I think Perdomo is just going to blow him out of the water again. But I understand that Adams kind of felt like he deserved the rematch, and it is good of them, to give him that. I thought that they were just going to have this fight headlined by Yoel Romero. He's going to be the co-main event now, and we also know that he is now going to be fighting Theo Ducas. Not really too familiar with him, but Romero's going to run through him. And then they also announced that they're going to be back in Rome on October 25th with Chris Camozzi versus Alessio Sakara for the Cruiserweight Championship. Sakara just recently debuted like the other week at BKFC, and he's already getting a title fight. I really wish we could just see Camozzi versus Lorenzo Hunt, but it's just impossible to make, I guess. But yeah, back-to-back fights in Italy for Camozzi against people in the BKFC who barely have any fights. So I'm not sure. I think Camozzi probably wins, but yeah, BKFC is putting together a really nice fall calendar, and I'm very curious who Mike Perry is going to fight on October 4th. And then lastly, Wade Plemons and Dylan Dennis put on a very much a hoax and a Misfits WWE cell where we were told that Wade had interviewed Dylan Dennis, and it broke out into a fight. And we're both posting stuff saying that footage is going to come out, and then footage comes out, and it was, Wade just giving him an interview, and then they sparred after, all friendly, all set up, all fake, which was kind of fun, but I thought that something really crazy happened. They did a really good job of making it seem real because, man, that would have been crazy if they'd actually fought. I didn't even watch the video. I saw little clips of it, but that is very good of Misfits trying to be like WWE and selling you on a storyline when it's just completely untrue. But yeah, that's all I've got for today. It was a bit of a long episode. We're going to do another one probably after Saturday once we get past UFC and the WBA boxing event. Should be a decent weekend. Just not a lot going on. We'll see if any more big news pops out. But yeah, Eubank Ben 2, Beterbiev Nicholson. Should be a good weekend coming up. Enjoy the fights. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Peace out.